So for the last few days, I've had a series of streams talking about the, in many cases, ill-suited critique of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And today's example is going to be different from the ones in preceding days. Because unlike the other ones, which were comments on YouTube, I actually have an article, or rather a statement made by the Republican National Committee that I will spend the entirety of this stream going over. I don't expect it to go on for as long as the other ones. We'll see what happens. The Republican National Committee, in an email on Thursday, condemned New York House candidate Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as the mini Maduro of the Democratic Party, comparing her to the authoritarian Venezuelan president Nicolas Maduro. Meet Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the mini Maduro, foreboding the future of Democrats. The RNC email proclaimed in bold letters, Maduro, the leader of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, has been accused of being a dictator. Under his leadership, Venezuela has struggled with rising levels of poverty, worsening living conditions, and increasing discord among its citizens. The RNC email draws a parallel between Ocasio-Cortez and Maduro because they both identify as socialists. The email slams Ocasio-Cortez for involvement with the Democratic Socialists of America, a grassroots socialist organization, and claims she has ignited turmoil in her party by declining to support Representative Nancy Pelosi as the next speaker should the Democrats retake the House. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is leading the Democratic Party to the left with nothing more than an unsubstantiated, factually incorrect socialist wish list, the email states. So that's enough nonsense. Here's a couple of things. In the last two streams, there have been a pattern of behaviors that we saw exercised by these critics of hers. And one of those was a lack of substance in their critique. We talked about people who wrote that she had a certain kind of eye and that, she was they had some kind of sexual interest in her. It was all things that had nothing to do with her ideology. And this is similar because what the RNC is doing in this example is trying to stroke the fear and the lack of awareness that people in the U.S. have about the term socialism and apply it to its worst possible examples. If I were to do to them what they have done to socialists, I would say the capitalist system is scary because under it we've currently seen half the U.S. be rendered poor. And that would be it would be as valid as their critique of Venezuela. And it wouldn't be me saying that we must now abandon capitalism in every possible conceivable way. It would be me attempting to argue that we should not look at one version or model of this and pretend as though that's the only way this could ever be implemented. But again, they're not here to get into specifics. They're just going to continue generalizing and talking about wish lists and dictators and all this other nonsense. Wicked Gesture says, in other words, we can't make actual arguments on the basis of policy. Let's just smear her and compare her to a dictator. That's pretty much it. The mini Maduro. Now, I bet you if you went up to most, not even most Republicans, just most Americans, they would have no idea who that man was. How could they? They weren't taught him in school. The media doesn't talk about him at all, other than when they bring him up in that manner. It's the strangest thing in the world that we have these parties, these organizations, and they're run by actual people. There's a human factor, and it's like they have this. They don't know who they're talking to. Like they talk about Maduro. What percentage of Republicans are you willing to bet actually know who that is? I'd be willing to say probably none, other than maybe 3 or 4%. And if they do, if they have heard of him, they still don't know much about him being in office. They just know that he's the leader of Venezuela. Venezuela's awful, and we have to just keep bringing them up over and over and over and over again. But yeah, I wanted to go to the RNC and bring up their example because if you have a group that's saying that, see, here's the thing: for as dumb as the comments that we've seen over the last two videos were, they have to be substantiated by a higher authority figure. Someone at the top has to say, hey, look, this is how we're gonna present this. We're gonna tell you that this person is bad, but we're not gonna specify it. We're going to tell you that this label is bad, but we're not going to talk about the positions associated with the label. It's the same thing Wicked Gesture just mentioned, that it's designed around using labels over and over. That's why when I get into my discussions about political issues, I prefer to go issue by issue, not are you Democrat, Republican, are you Socialist, Communist, because it's that those labels by themselves invoke negative feelings in people since they're so vague in general. And what's creepier is that you have the RNC, which let me explain you what is very amusing. I've seen Republicans in office. Um, I've seen Democrats in office who've talked about how there shouldn't be a litmus test for their candidates. And what I can't quite understand is that there's, I mean, for God's sakes, if Pelosi and Cortez don't agree on anything, why would Cortez support her for speaker? Common sense would tell people I'm not going to back someone who is opposed to my positions, my values, whatever. That should be the example that we abide by if we're talking about people who run for office and who feel the need to, speak about someone that they find themselves in favor of. But for whatever reason, they've decided over the course of oh so many weeks of just her being famous, or rather 2 months now, over 2 months, that this is how we're going to frame her. We're going to put it that she's the person who can't get along with anybody, that is trying to mess with the party, screw them up. When in reality, it's very simple in its conception that people do not back someone that doesn't share their positions on issues in a lot of cases. So them going after her for not liking Pelosi is nonsensical, especially when most people don't like Pelosi. She has a 60 plus disapproval rating. That woman is very unpopular. Only reason she even stays as chair as Democratic leader in the House is because she pays out the other members of that caucus in that chamber to vote for her over and over again. But this is who we need to blindly get behind and go, oh, Speaker Pelosi, I love you so much. That's who they need to do that for. The person who's literally only in a position of power because she gives coins to the other corrupt politicians to keep her in that position. I mean, one of the things that is kind of that I do, what this article brings up that I like is the idea that you shouldn't, or rather by mentioning the fact that she doesn't back the establishment of her party, they bring up the fact that you have members of a party who don't always agree with their leaders. And the Democratic leadership is terrible right now. You have, again, Pelosi as the top House Democrat, and she doesn't do anything other than fundraise. You have Schumer, who is the same way, and you have Perez as the DNC chair, when all he does is say, "Oh, we don't need any change. We're on a unity tour. We don't need any change." So what? Why would she support them? And I would think the RNC would like her, messing things up, quote unquote. They had some Republican representative go on Fox and talk about how great it was that she was opposed to the majority of the party, or that because she was supposedly not doing what the rest of the party was, that was a good thing. And that they should welcome her because she's going to lead them down this hole. Even though I thought what he was saying was ridiculous, it fits with the position he has. If you're the enemy, you don't want your enemy or the person you run against to succeed. So when they go and do things like appoint someone that you think is going to further push them down the path of destruction, you're satisfied with that. I know I would be. So it's more weird stuff. But Wicked Gesture writes, Ben Shapiro said words that made me feel good, so that means socialism is bad because I said so. So much for facts, don't care about your feelings. Like I said, everyone is just going to keep bringing that term up, but you'll never see a person sit here and go issue by issue, or just have a discussion about Medicare for all, free college, raising the minimum wage. Um, None of it. They never talk about it. It's just the same talking point of socialism, Venezuela being thrown around over and over and over again like a boomerang until it sticks. It's part of the same smear campaign they've been doing to a plurality of the Democratic candidates we've seen over the last couple of decades. I mean, for God's sake, you had McConnell come out and say that Obama was a leftist, was someone that was very, very liberal, when that could be anything but the case. Let me say hello to Dirk. He just came back from his date with the person that the video is titled after, so he's our foremost expert on her. Which, by the way, Dirk, did you know her dad died of lung cancer? And that she had to apparently fight off people that were going after his estate? I didn't find out about that until about maybe 2 or 3 days ago. So, the other part of this to take into account is that, isn't it ironic how we have so much? Let me read. I'm going to read Wicked Gestures. Come and get back to my point. Oh, they care about facts only when they are convenient to their master's narrative. Uh, Dirk says, "Wait, why were people going after that?" Oh no, they weren't. I was just talking about the article I read earlier was the RNC calling her the mini Maduro after naming her after the Venezuelan president. So more of that nonsense with the two terms going back and forth. How you doing, Ruben? I forgot to check if Ocasio is married. By the way, I live in Idaho. You asked a while ago. Dirk, I was going to point out that one of the things I've noticed is that when you look up Fox or NBC or MSNBC or any of these other networks, it seems like because to my knowledge, she hasn't made the same number of public appearances, but it seems like all we can get at this point are just people talking about her as opposed to her actually speaking and being shown. Like, for example, I think all of the current senators, at least I think, I haven't checked, but I know a majority of them have YouTube accounts, so you can go and watch them in their natural habitat. And with her, I've noticed that there's really no archive of just everything relating to her. It's like you have to just kind of look around for different clips that Fox will show and go, oh, we cut this, we cut that part, we cut that part, we cut this part. And it's really lame because it means that people can't for themselves just watch this person's stuff and get an idea of who they are. Which really is crippling of social media because the stuff is there so you can look at it in its without the being abridged on TV as it often is, or the bias of someone else jumping into what you're saying. Oh, and by the way, Ruben, she's not married. She is currently dating one of my subscribers, the one that comments underneath you. Dirk, if at any point you feel annoyed by that, let me know. I don't know why you would, but it's people get all upset about everything. Yeah, the Democratic Party is a walking, talking. It's like I would compare it to going to a circus, and then there's that one. Hey, Dirk, especially after given the type of content that often comes up on here every like 2 weeks about the relationship stuff, but I've noticed. What I was going to say was that the Democratic Party is like that one circus that has a ride that no one ever goes, like a performer no one ever goes to see perform, and they just sit there doing their tricks over and over again, and they keep staring at those empty pews, smiling, thinking someone's caught onto their tricks over and over again. Because the Democrats, they asked Pelosi, what changes do you guys? Oh, we don't need any change. It's that kind of thing where she genuinely believes, or at least is trying to get us to believe that she thinks things are fine. And then there's that empty pew of supporters, all those people that have left, that have just walked away. Wicked Gesture says the Oppression Olympics. Yeah, that's a pretty good name for it. I mean, I want you to understand something. The way the world works, because everyone has a voice on social media. We're still gonna have to be reading comments like these in another 40 to 50 years. Dirk says the comments you were reading yesterday, though, and daring to say the debate with Candace Owens, the only Republican they try to compare her to. Jesus, some people have no brain cells. I saw the video later on, and yikes. Yeah, man. Go watch the thing with Joe Rogan about her with climate change. It was completely moronic. And look, I agree with the idea that all of whatever group should not be, part of some. What is this? Should not be part of one party. Okay, so he says, cut, you're more conservative, you think we're not monsters. I don't know anyone who called you a monster. Do me a favor, look through the comment section or rather look through the stream, the comment section of each stream, and see where you were referred to as a monster. No one called you that. Oh yeah, Dirk, I was gonna play the clip of Obama giving that speech at Chicago, but that thing is like an hour long, and I want to talk about this more because he's not getting the same amount of traction that she has. But I was trying to say that earlier that this is because of the nature of politics. You're gonna have to be dealing with comments like that for another 40 or 50 years. People saying, "Why did you support this person? Why did you like that person?" Even after it's been explained over and over. Just last night, I posted endorsement of O'Rourke on Instagram, and I talked about how Cruz voted for the $717 billion military budget that is $100 billion increase that we're all gonna have to pay for. And this person says, "In what ways is O'Rourke better?" I'm like, okay, well, I don't need to respond to you if I just told you without actually knowing that I was speaking to you. Just in general, you post something, you leave it there for people to see in the public. Still ask me, how is he better? So I didn't even bother with that. Dirk says, "Whoa, then I run Monsters Inc." Are you referring to the movie? Wicked Gesture says, "No one said you were a monster. Get off your victim complex." Look, I don't agree with the victim complex part, but no one, I know I haven't said that. I think a lot of the office holders from both parties act like monsters because they allow the corporations to influence their positions, and they work for them as opposed to the people that they represent and that vote for them without being aware of their corruption. So I have never said anything about that whole group being monsters or any of that grouping, at least the ones that aren't in office anyway. My God. One of the more amusing parts that you have to take away from the period of the last 2 months, and I want to keep emphasizing this point. You have a candidate who hasn't even taken office yet, and if she wins, she's going to be one of 400 members of the House. It's not that big of a position. It just isn't. But because she beat this establishment Democrat, she's getting propped up as this major, standard bearer in the party. Wicked Gesture says, "Then why are you mentioning that conservatives are monsters?" Dirk says, "This is crazy. The amount of effort Obama put in his tours for speeches and book selling." Yeah, man. And then what's worse is that anyone who wants to enter, like, that's why I don't like these parties. They have the hive mind mentality, where it's like, scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. So, for example, if you were to criticize, let's say you're a senator or a congressman, you criticize Trump, you're a member of the Republicans. You can't go against the president. I don't care what he did. And it's the same thing now, where you can't say anything bad about Obama. a year after he's been out of office, while he was in office, before he was in office. It's just it's not authorized. We have to all like each other. We have to all get along. Um, it's all homogenized, and it's part of why no one why so many people identify as independents. They don't want to be strapped up to some kind of system that doesn't allow them to be themselves. I always say my mind, then I get out, then I get the oh, I thought you were a Democrat. Yeah, and it's really weird because most people in the U.S. are independents, and we have statistics on what issues in particular are most liked or favored. So it gets really weird when there's this idea that automatically someone has to be part of this party because they live in this state or they said this one nice thing about this one person. I mean, I don't even know what rhinos and dinos even means anymore. Democrat, Republican, name only. But it seems like anytime somebody doesn't vote with the party in its entirety, they get called that. Like I did the last good Republican in Congress, for example, and he votes against the tax cuts, or yeah, he's the only Republican in the House to vote against that. Gets called a rhino for having principles. Dirk says the fake populists kill off the real ones for the amount of they sell with advertisements and smear campaigns. Yeah, and Dirk, that's what Fox has been doing to her like crazy, and it's really weird because, like I said before, we have more footage of people just blabbering on about a clip of her speaking than her actually talking. This is weird, man. Now, Maurice isn't an independent. If you go on his page, his whole background is red with elephants. That's a Republican account. His Twitter handle is GOP Reese. Wicked Gesture says, I think people should take a human decency test before they get on the internet, limit the amount of toxic individuals on the internet. Wicked Gesture, I mentioned a while back that there was a guy who wanted the IQ test to get online, and everybody laughed at him, and now he was so right. Dirk says scarcity. Ruben says anything else in U.S. government that you noticed recently. Other than the Kavanaugh stuff, it's just been that, which has been Booker, grandstanding. Oh, here's some more documents. I'm taking a stand against Trump, or in Kavanaugh or whatever. Um, I will admit that there was an event, not related to the romance stuff, but kind of politically motivated that happened to me personally that I was going to. I pondered speaking about, but I threw it out because I figured nobody would care. So I vetoed that being mentioned. Dirk says maybe even has a handle with the title make him before his name. uh, Dirk, are you asking what happened with the hearings? I really like the hearings today because you had the people come out. You had the girl who was there when they had the shooting in at Stoneman Douglas. So she gave a really good testimony himself for the fake. Oh yeah, he did, Dirk. But people are eating that stuff up on Twitter, which is why every time I go on there to spread my message, I just feel like it's a waste of time. But look, I'm gonna get off of here. I hope you enjoyed this installment. And remember, let's stop going by labels and looking at people's positions. All these Republicans and Democrats I don't like, I actually look up their positions. I don't just go, oh, this Democrat. So, thank you.